Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome back to my next election analysis video. Today we're going to be looking at basically every single race, excuse me, that I got wrong in my 2022 U.S. House election prediction. So I know that it has been 2 weeks, but and I'm sorry that I haven't made this video sooner. But the reason why is because we've had a lot of I've been busy, and we've also had still some House races that have not yet been called. For instance, Alaska, we're supposed to get, I think, the final results from the ranked choice voting tonight, or, sometime tomorrow. I do expect Mary Peltola to win, so that's why I'm not characterizing it as an incorrect call. But as you can see right here in this California district, I do expect to have, called that race wrong. We also, not all news sources have called Colorado free for Lauren Boebert, but it seems like she's going to win. I have that race is likely red, so that's not really going to be a major issue. But anyways, as you can see here, I officially got 15 races wrong. I called them incorrectly. This California district, we'll get to it soon. But it's a technicality. It looks like I'm gonna get that one wrong as well, but it is not, set in stone yet because it hasn't been called by the major media. I use NBC News, and they have not called some of these races still, but the general consensus, I guess, for most of them, is this person won, that person won. Anyways, I'm rambling, so let's go from the West Coast to the East Coast, and let's look at the races I got wrong, and I'll explain why I got them wrong. So, all the way up here in Washington, this one I don't blame myself for. It's the 3rd District. Jamie Herrera Butler is the incumbent Republican. She was one of the few Republicans in the House that voted to impeach Trump, and she got kicked out. She got primaried out by Joe Kent, who is a very right-wing candidate, and I thought this district could have been promising to Democrats in the future. But I did not expect the Democratic nominee, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, I believe is her name, to win this race, and she actually did. She won it by, I think, about a point. It was a big upset. No one really saw it coming. I had this race as likely Republican. I was cautious. I thought maybe it's lean, but I didn't really think it was going to be all that close, and so it is interesting how it was able to flip, and you'll see like a big theme with a lot of these upsets is that they were Trump, they were Trump, the Republicans nominated Trump endorsed candidates. It does go to show that Trump is a poison to the Republican Party, but that's a topic for another video. Oregon, I did not get any wrong. California, I have officially gotten one wrong, and that was the 22nd district. The 22nd district, it is, I think, Biden plus 13. It went to Joe Biden by 13 points in 2020. The incumbent Republican is David Valadao, who is a very, very much an outperformer, very moderate Republican, also another anti-Trump Republican. He voted to impeach Trump, but he was actually one of only two Republicans, Dan Newhouse of Washington being the other one, to win his win renomination. He didn't really face a problem in the primary here. In the 22nd district, Trump did not endorse a candidate that was challenging him, although he did have some primary challengers. But I thought that while his overperformance with Democratic and swing voters, that would help him win re-election. But the Democrats nominated Rudy Salas, who was a state assemblyman who outperformed Biden by double digits in his district in 2020. I thought that he was a stellar candidate and that he would be able to make it across the finish line, but unfortunately, it does seem like he hasn't. Wikipedia has already colored in the races red. CNN's called it. NBC has not, but I mean, 98% of the vote in Valadeo is leading Salos by 4 points or 3.5 points. So I think it's pretty clear say that he has officially won the race as of right now. This little light color district, this is the California district I was talking about earlier. It's the 13th district. It's a new seat. The I had this race as lean Democratic, and by the way, I had the 22nd as tilted D, by the way. But just for specific, specificity matter. I can't speak today. Anyways, the 13th district. This is a new seat. It's I believe Biden plus 11, and it was very competitive. Politico by election day had moved it to lean Republican. I didn't really buy that, but it does look like it's going to flip to the GOP. John Durate Duarte seems to have won the race. There's a 96% of the vote in, but this race is lean D. It looks like Adam Gray, the Democrat's, going to lose it by a couple hundred votes. It's going to be really close. But yeah, California and New York were really bright spots for Republicans this year. It's interesting how Democrats and Republicans, struggled in their home bases while while Democrats mainly did well in most of the competitive races. It's very interesting to see. And we'll talk. You'll see that in New York when we get over there as well. But we're working from west to east here. Um, and then we go over to the state of Nevada, where I got Susie Lee's district wrong. It's this one right down here, the 3rd congressional district. I had it as tilt red. It went to her by about 4 points, and yeah, it was not a very good showing on my end. My argument here was basically that uh Lee was Lee, I think she was in a Biden plus 7 or 6 district. I've heard some people say it's Biden plus 4. I don't know the exact number, but it was pretty friendly. And at the time it looked like Adam Laxalt and Joe Lombardo were going to do well in their in the Senate and governor's races. And I figured, well, I mean, Clark County didn't turnout didn't look too great for Democrats at the time, and I thought, in Nevada, all of the free Democratic seats are, competitive. They're bound to lose one of them in this type of national environment, but they weren't. They didn't. I got the other two districts right. I predicted Horsford and Titus would win, and that's what happened. But Lee, I was wrong about this one. I think Cortez Master really did help Lee out here. But yeah, that's my the typical Nevada prediction. That a lot of people got. That the overestimation of Republican support that always seems to plague Nevada and the pundits every time. And then if you go down to New Mexico here, I got the 2nd congressional district wrong. This one is the Yvette Harrell's district. It's Biden plus 7. Democrats actually made the two seats they currently hold in New Mexico weaker to compromise for this seat, which was kind of stupid at the time, in my opinion. But it does seem like it's paid out well for them because the redistricting for New Mexico happened back in November of last year. It looked like it was going to be, a really big red wave, and there was potential for Republicans to maybe even win all 3 of these races. Um, you know, in that kind of environment. But good news for Democrats, they didn't. The incumbent Republican Yvette Harrell lost to Gabe Vasquez. I had this race as lean red, and this was a very this was a seat that was very important to House control. It was described as a bellwether, by many people, and well, the House still went red. This district did go for the Democrats. Vasquez just seemed really progressive in my opinion, and I thought that Harrell, she would lose eventually at some point. I figured 2024 would be her time. The turnout in New Mexico didn't look great, but my argument also was that Mark Ronchetti would pull. Mark Ronchetti would do really well in this district at the top of the ticket against Michelle Lujan Grisham, and I figured that that would propel Harrell to a narrow victory. But I was not correct about that, and Ronchetti didn't end up doing too well. He lost by about 6 points. I figured he'd lose by about 4. And up here, the next district we have is Colorado. Colorado's 8th district. This is another new seat. I had this as lean red. It's Biden plus 5. A lot of people got this one wrong. My argument was that Joe O'Dea, the Republican nominee for Senate in the state, would do a lot better than he did, and he would bring some of these Republicans across the finish line with him. It looked like Barbara Kirkmeyer, the Republican, was going to do really well, but Yadira Caravillo, who is I think is going to be Colorado's first Latina congresswoman. So that's a pretty big milestone for them. But she was able to win this race. 538 actually only gave her a 9% chance. So that goes to show how wonky 538's forecast was. I had it as lean red. But this was another crucial district for House control to go to the Democrats. But it was still not enough to propel them to a House victory. There was a lot of cursed. There was a lot of um relations between the outcomes of some of these house districts that was not expected. So yeah, now we're going to go over to more of the eastern half of the U.S. and we're going to go down to North Carolina where I only got one race wrong. It was the 13th district. This was another new seat, another crucial house seat. I think you can see a pattern here. Um, but this district was Biden plus 5. I originally had this as a Democratic seat, but Bo Hines, the GOP nominee, seemed to kind of get off the ground and by the final weeks of the campaign, and he was favored by the fundamentals. A lot of people had this as likely are. I'm glad I only had it as a lean. But the Democrats, I figured would have a bit of an abysmal showing in North Carolina for turnout in a midterm year. I figured Sherry Beasley would do, well, but I had her races likely red. It was lean red, so, I underestimated Democrats in North Carolina. Um, but I figured, that the fact that, uh, Democrats, in North Carolina have a really bad problem with black turnout, especially in midterm years, that would kind of cost them this seat. Well, it turns out that Bo Hines was kind of, was a bad enough candidate to cost them that despite Ted Budd still winning at the top of the ticket. So I got that one wrong. And now we're going to go up into more of the Midwestern region where I got a couple excuse me, of districts wrong. And these ones were kind of embarrassing. So the first one I got wrong was Indiana's first congressional district. It's a right turning seat. I think it's Biden plus 8 or 9. The Democratic incumbent, Frank Mervyn, was facing a really strong challenger, so I thought, from a Jennifer Ruth Green. He had tried to investigate her past, and it was just campaigned, and it ended up revealing some personal trauma that she experienced, and it made him kind of look like an ass. And so that and while most people have this as rated as a Democratic hold, I had it as a Republican pickup. I figured Indiana doesn't have like any major statewide races this year. It didn't have any besides the Senate race, and that wasn't competitive at all. Todd Young won easily. And so I figured that, it would be close, but Republicans, doing better in working class seats would be able to pick off Mervyn. And he ended up winning by 6 points or 5 points at the end of the day. So it wasn't really all that close. But, this one I was, this one I wasn't too angry about, but I was I was pretty convinced that Mervyn was going to lose going into election day. Now, Ohio, this was, a bloodbath. I got Steve Chabot's district right in the first congressional district, and I'm proud of that, but I got the other two competitive districts wrong. So the ninth was the one that I'm really angry at myself about because Marcy Kaptur was doing really well in the fundamentals. A lot of people had given her the race, and I just kind of decided to go against the consensus. I did the thing that unbiased election predictions did. I think I put a little too much weight on his predictions. Not to say that he's not accurate. He was better than the consensus. But I figured that Copter would lose because of partisanship, and even though J.R. Majewski had gotten pretty much abandoned by the national GOP. that I figured, that doesn't always, mean that he's 100% going to lose. And I also just did not want to bet against Republicans in working class seats, especially in Ohio, where they're usually underestimated by a lot. It was interesting to see Tim Ryan pretty much run even with his polling. He only lost by about 7 points. I figured, or 6.5. I figured he'd lose by 7 or 8. So he outperformed my expectations. And then the 13th, I did not see this one coming at all. This is actually Tim Ryan's district. It's Biden plus free, and it looked like I had it as lean red. It actually went to the Democrat Amelia Sykes by or not 13, by 5 points. Copter won by 13, which made that a really big embarrassing miss for me. But this one went. Let me see if I can get it. It went to Amelia Sykes by 5 points. So I missed big in this district. I, really underestimated how much Tim Ryan would help Democrats at the top of the ticket in Ohio. I figured he would help them, but since he was kind of collapsing in polling data, I figured they were going to lose. These two districts, I figured they'd pick up the Cincinnati seat though, so I'm fine. I'm fine with that, but I still overestimated Steve Shabbat in that regard. So Ohio was pretty much was so far my biggest miss. We'll have to get to New York, but everyone was pretty much wrong about New York. Going to Pennsylvania, I got the 17th district with Chris Delujo and the 8th with Matt Cartwright. Right, no pun intended. Yeah, I'm proud about those. I'm sorry, my voice is still really messed up today. I'm still feeling a little sick. But the 7th, I was wrong about. This is Susan Wild's district, and I don't blame myself for this one. Pretty much everyone was wrong about this district. It was Biden plus point 0.6. Wild wasn't that great of an incumbent. She actually was the only Democrat who got dealt. She was dealt a bad hand. In the redistricting. Her seat was the only one that was made redder. She was the only Democrat to get a redder seat than she had previously. Um, Lisa Scheller seemed like a pretty good candidate, and the fundamentals favored her. It looked like that she was gonna, win by around 3 points. So I had this race as lean red, and it ended up going to wild by about 2. So this one I don't blame myself for. But this was a shock to everyone. I had it like I think my first house prediction I had wild winning, and I went back to that and I changed that because I felt like that was a bit of a wish cast, but turns out it wasn't. That's actually what happened. So, yeah. Now going over to New York, this was a bloodbath for me. This was really, really bad. I got 4 districts wrong, and I'm not mad at myself because as much as I would be if other people had gotten, you know, a more accurate result, but I got 4 of these districts wrong, and I'm going to go through all of them. Basically, the reason why Republicans did so well in New York is, because of Lee Zeldin doing so well against Kathy Hochul, and I think New York was really weak for Democrats this year. They still won it, but they won it by a lot less. Hochul only ended up winning by 6. But I think that the reason they did so poorly was in part because of Andrew Cuomo's scandals. Um, and and his resignation, I think that turned a lot of Democrats off, and it affected Chuck Schumer's race. He only won by around 13 points, which was a lot worse than what I expected. I figured he'd win by around 20. But anyways, that had really affected these House seats in New York, especially on Long Island, which we can start with right now. So the third and the fourth, these two are pretty heavily Democratic seats, especially the fourth. And I figured both of these would be lean blue. Um, you know, and they ended up going to the Republicans by I think it was likely margins. Like, you know, Zeldin did really well in Long Island, which is of course because he's from there. Well, the fourth was lean, but still, this is one where I differentiated from a unbiased election predictions. He had this as tilt red, so he got this one right. Kudos to him. But I had it as lean red, and Zeldin did so well on Long Island. Then he made the second safe and the first likely. I figured the first would be likely, but these two, the fourth especially came out of nowhere. This one is lean blue. I figured, that it was a Biden plus 14 seed, and I figured it'd be close, but because Zeldin was doing so well, but it wouldn't be like a pickup. It turns out it was. And then these other two were, like a little bit more, weren't as surprising. I think the most surprising or the one that was more surprising was the 19th, Mark Molinaro. He had just come off losing that special election to Pat Ryan, and Ryan only won by, he actually outperformed Biden in the old district, but he barely won his reelection. In November. In here, the 18th district, but in the 19th district, this new seat, Molinaro, I thought was going to lose to Josh Riley. He ended up winning by around 3 points, or 2 points. I can't remember. 2 points. Um, it was I figured this was a bluer district than the one he was running in previously, and I think the reason I got all of these wrong is because I really underestimated Lee Zeldin in New York. I really thought that he was going to lose by 10 and not 5. And I thought that the race was getting a little too hyped up, but it turns out it wasn't. So yeah, that's why I got that one wrong. In the 19th and the 17th, this was Sean Patrick Maloney, and this one hurt. I really like Sean Patrick Maloney. I had this one as lean D. I had the 19th as tilt. The 17th, there was a lot of hype about this one before the election by the media. Excuse me. But yeah, there was a lot of hype about this one. And Maloney, despite, being the chair of the Triple C, which, pretty much helped, out a lot of Democrats across the country win their re-elections in the House. It was something, he was one of the incumbents to lose, and it was kind of, you know, a little sad that he had to go down that he went down while the rest of, while the overwhelming majority of Democrats got reelected in those competitive seats, or even some flipped a couple seats. So it was disappointing that Mike Lawler won, but not entirely unexpected. He only won by about, a point. So it was very close, but in the end, Maloney did suffer a loss, and that is very sad. Um, and then the final district that I got wrong, this one I'm also mad about, is Maine's 2nd congressional district. On the surface, this looked like a pretty good GOP pickup. If the incumbent Democrat was not like such a good recruit for the state, I had it as tilt red. I thought that Jared Golden was really going to go down and that Paul LePage would do a lot better than he ended up doing. I had the races likely blue, but I did not think that Janet Mills was going to win Maine by 14 points. That came out of absolutely nowhere. And I thought Bruce Poliquin was like not a bad candidate, but I figured I figured he was bad. He was not the best, and he may have suffered from the repeat candidate syndrome. But he was someone who had won in the past before, and Golden, I thought he was gonna really suffer from polarization, and also the polling data did not look, it looked good for Golden on the surface, but when you applied the 2020 polling miss in Maine in the 2nd congressional district to those polls, you would have seen a Poliquin beating Golden. And it was there had been a pretty consistent like overestimation of Democrats in this district. This was probably what gave Susan Collins that land. This district was probably heavily underestimated. It's very working class, very rural. A lot of Obama Trump voters here. And, it's a Trump plus 6 seat, and, this is probably why Susan Collins, was severely underestimated in the polling data, is because this is a very hard place to poll. But it ended up, that Golden was able to win by around 6 points when it was all said and done, which is pretty much the same that he won by last time. And the GOP didn't really, have a very good candidate in a 2020. So it's surprising that Golden was pretty much able to match his 2020 margin, and it really shows that how strong of a candidate he truly is. So I'm going to try to take that into account in the future, and I think that I will probably have his district as a blue state, or going to him in the 2024 election, whenever I make my first prediction on that front. Sorry. So thank you guys so much for watching. I got 10